Well, welcome to the podcast for today, everyone. I'm R.C. Marcusa, and we're digging into two very different things on the podcast. One of them is going to leave you maybe hopeful as we hear about a new podcast actually that's out there, not ours, another one, but it has youth talking about their mental health and being empowered by sharing. But the other story is... well, it's a bit controversial. It leaves more questions than answers. We're going to start there. Thanks for being with us. This is Manitoba. So Manitoba Progressive Conservative leadership candidate Wally Daudrich is facing criticism. Earlier this week, while speaking at a PC leadership event, Daudrich said this.
Now we have a homeless crisis here in Winnipeg. I always say where I come from in Churchill, we don't have any homeless people. Anybody take a guess why? It's very funny when it's when there's serious repercussions for a bad lifestyle, people smarten up very quickly. So my plan is to import 10 polar bears, then let them go in front of the ledge, live in there, and let them have enter.
Quote, serious repercussions for a bad lifestyle. End quote. So those comments you heard come weeks after Daudrich was called on already to apologize for sharing a social media post calling his leadership rival, quote, Muslim Abi Khan, end quote. The post said Khan needed to be stopped from becoming the party leader. CBC's Bartley Kives spoke to Daudrich about the polar bear remark. Here's that conversation.
That was a joke, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And it was said as a joke very clearly. And I even afterwards iterated that, of course I'm joking.
Okay, I figured that. But the one thing in there that seemed to me a serious comment, and this is what I want to actually ask about, is you had said that in Churchill there are no homeless people because there are serious repercussions for that lifestyle. So I guess my question is do you consider homelessness to be a lifestyle?
No, homelessness largely is a result of drug addiction. And we need to deal with the drug addiction issue in Manitoba, especially in Winnipeg.
Okay, so it's not like, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
no, I love as a Christian, I love people, I love everybody, and I as that pro-life type of person, that attitude dictates the value that I put on people everywhere, including the homeless people.
Would you have any concern if somebody heard that joke and thought, okay, well, this might be a little mean?
When I said it, I do understand that there might be somebody who might take it that way, and I know that there was one person from the other campaign that was present. So I don't feel like I try to style my speech or my exact words to be 100%. Locked, solid, tight, that I can never be criticized. If people want to criticize me on that, they have to understand. Obviously, nobody's going to be moving polar bears around.
That is Manitoba PC leadership candidate Wally Daudrich in conversation with CBC's Bartley Kives. Manitoba PC member Thomas Rempel-Ong is concerned about Daudrich's comments. He also spoke to Bartley.
Honestly, when I heard it, I had to think to myself, I'm assuming this is just a really, really badly thought out joke because I don't know anyone who would seriously think that a solution to poverty is to unleash polar bears.
He also said, though, in that statement, because I listened to the transcript, I mean, obviously he was joking, there was laughter, but he also said when there are repercussions, people with that lifestyle, that tends to take care of itself pretty quickly. The suggestion being that homelessness is a lifestyle.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously from my own standpoint, volunteering at an organization that works with people who are struggling with that, it's not as simple as saying they chose to be like this. Sometimes it's someone lost their job or they're struggling with an addiction, and it's not that they chose to live it rough.
Now, I spoke to Wally Daudrich today, and he said, yes, it was a joke. I asked him about the repercussions line, and he said, no, I care about people. I'm a Christian, and it's that addictions cause homelessness. He also stated that, he's not always that polished, and said that jokes sometimes, they sometimes rub people the wrong way. Do you have any concerns about the candidate's remarks, even with the context that he provided a day later when I asked him about it.
As much as you'd like to think, obviously different people have different senses of humor, considering joking that we can solve homelessness with polar bears, I don't know anyone who possibly thinks that that's funny, because you're basically joking that homeless people can be bear food. Like that's not a joke. And I guess the difficulty is, well, if this is how he's speaking, directly to a friendly audience of party members, well, what's the rhetoric that's serious versus a joke? Obviously, when you're running to be leader of a political party, you're supposed to be taken seriously, but with an event like this, do we just kind of assume he's always joking, or it's a bit of a struggle?
Are we simply seeing the goalposts move? We have a U.S. president in the South that makes statements all the time that can ruffle some people's feathers. I'm not suggesting that Mr. Daudrich is Mr. Trump, but is it just the era of politeness, is that over now, do you think?
I don't think it's across the board, but if the defense was that, well, it's just a bad joke, well, maybe there was a time when we thought through before we actually spoke. And yes, we know that Trump is going to probably say something every single day. That doesn't mean that you can just say whatever you want without consequences.
Does Mr. Daudrich's comments yesterday, will that affect the way you intend to vote this spring?
I mean, it's definitely going to be a factor, because at the end of the day, I would like to think that if you're speaking to people directly, that's what you honestly think, as opposed to when a reporter talks to you, the day afterwards. Of course, you're going to be saying something a little different. So ultimately, I have to decide, do I vote for someone as leader who jokes about using polar bears to reduce the homeless population? For me, a polar bear is something, my family goes to see at the zoo, or, maybe someday we go to Churchill to see them in person. But the thought that someone thinks I'll joke about using polar bears as a poverty patrol, I didn't expect that would come up.
That was the CBC's Bartley Kives speaking to Manitoba PC Party member Thomas Rempel-Ong. Well, up next on CBC, young people are taking charge in sharing their experiences about mental health. Or better said, taking the mic. The Let's Listen podcast is focused around mental health, and it is by youth and for youth. The episode that we're talking about features young people that attend Huddle South Central. That's a safe space for youth to go. And so far, they've been talking about social media use, self-care, and then just general mental health overall. One or two students are featured in each and every episode, and an expert that can answer questions and facilitate the conversation also joins. Omar Clark is a producer of the podcast and service navigation specialist at Huddle South Central. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Noah Viner Finley is one of the young people who was part of the podcast. Good morning to you.
Hello.
So how did I do in describing? I described the need for this, Omar. But can you do better than I did in terms of why did you guys start this? Where did you see the need for it?
I think you did a fantastic job. I should copyright that. But the need was the youth told us what they needed. The huddles are all built around what the community wants, what community needs. And when we did the first episode of the Idea Mill, it took us a summer to record one episode, and we just kept recording little bits. We had a group of about 8 youth there, and then they kept telling us, more people said, hey, I want to do it. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about mental health. I want to tell people my stories. I want to hopefully help some people. So that was once they started telling me that, I'm like, okay, well, let's keep this going.
Yeah. What was it like seeing the students open up in the episodes for you?
There's quite a range of the way the youth opened up. Some tell stories that I'm like, we need to put a trigger warning here. Mm-hmm. And then some are just sharing their experiences and what they want people to hear. It's a release for them when they walk out the booth. Everybody comes out like a little bit like lighter, like I've shared something today and I'm happy I got it off my chest.
When you go in, I bet the feeling is a bit different. So Noah, you were part of some of this podcast. What did it feel like when you were deciding I'm going to share? What was that like for you, first of all?
I think at first it was like a lot nerve-wracking, And then slowly, like, as the episodes kept going, like, my nervous system kind of, like, went down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of feels nice to, like, let go of things that I've had bottled up for so long. So I think the podcast is a great outlet for me and other people.
Why for other people? Did you get some feedback as well after you shared?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A bunch of my friends, like, when I went to Churchill, a bunch of my friends also did the podcast. And so we would, like, share how we felt about it. And they would also say that they felt like some of their nerves went away too, talking about their mental health experiences.
For sure. What are some of, Omar, the most striking conversations in your view that you've heard so far, been part of?
Some of those striking things, people talk about their events that have happened in their lives, relationships with their family members, and how that's affected them, some generational trauma. Those things are some of those conversations I had put trigger warnings on. I've done a lot of editing. But just to have them be able to do that and come to that and talk about it, especially with counseling being so hard to find. The counselors, the wait list for counseling is very, very long. Right now. So we're in a mental health crisis. Our youth came through COVID with a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. And if you were 13 at that time when COVID started, like, you had no outlets, you now have the opportunity to come out and share. And yeah, they listen to the episodes.
Yeah.
So I'll say, yeah.
Yeah. Is there an average age of people that you're featuring on the episodes just so far? Like, when you think about, are people 15? Are they 18? Like, are they 25?
We stick to the Huddle mandate of doing 12 to 29.
Yep.
Most of the youth are between, I'd say, 15 to 21.
Yeah.
Most of them that have been on the show so far.
How old are you, Noah?
I'm 18.
You're 18. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned Churchill High School.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Still going there? Still your school?
I finished this past February
Yeah.
at the beginning, so I'm done now.
I might have seen you react when Omar was talking about youth and the pandemic, and how people were impacted and tying to mental health. Do you relate to that, or is that something that among your age group that people do talk about?
I definitely do relate to it because I was 15 when the pandemic happened.
Yeah. What was the impact on your mental health that maybe you could articulate?
It definitely took a big toll on me because, like, I couldn't go anywhere. I was just trapped in this bubble, and so it kind of took, like, a lot for me.
Yeah.
So,
what can you share with us about what you shared on the podcast that you were part of?
like, what do you mean?
What did you talk about in the podcast when you were on it?
Oh, for me, I don't really think I shared, like, specific, like, moments of my life. I think I was just sharing mainly, like, the general aspect of my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what is the general aspect of your mental health?
just, like, day to day, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and, like, how, like, my brain works and how it affects, like, me and possibly other people too.
Okay.
So,
I don't want to project, but there's anxiety, there's depression, there's all kinds of different things. But there's also what do you mean by how your brain works?
I just, lately I've been working with, like, obviously, like, Huddle and stuff, but I'm trying to work with other people so I can figure out, like, a little bit more about how my brain works, because I definitely notice that I'm, like, a bit different than other people.
In what way?
I don't know. It's just my brain, like, gears differently than other people. Like, I think other things than other people, and, like, I'm trying to figure out how that is.
Yeah. Like, do you go down doom scrolling rabbit holes, or when you're trying to articulate a thought, will you be missing steps in between to connect things?
Yeah. Like, I kind of have trouble connecting point A to point B, and so it kind of spikes my anxiety a little bit because I don't know how to get to those points.
Got it.
So,
Does that make you nervous? Does that make like an interaction nerve-wracking because
Yeah.
you feel like you might come across a certain way?
I basically almost every single time before I speak to somebody, I have to, like, run it through my brain first.
Yeah.
And so the reaction that I would get in my brain before talking to people is completely different than how it is when I'm actually talking to somebody.
Would you assume the reaction would be more negative?
Yeah.
And
Almost all the time. Yeah.
And would that make you then? What would the impact of that be? Would it be almost not wanting to have the interaction?
Yeah. Most of the time, like, most of my like wanting to do things is kind of shut down by my brain and not wanting to do it.
And when you step out and you do have, because it's courage, right? It's self-confidence, courage, it's understanding your brain, as you said, when you're able to do that and share and be you and engage. You said most times what you've thought the reaction will be is always more negative than what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does it make you feel the more you step into that uncertainty and you get back this positive stuff?
I think it feels nice. Like I'm learning to start like being courageous and taking steps to make sure that like I know what will happen. And so I think if I keep just forcing myself to have difficult conversations, then it would definitely make things a lot easier.
What do you mean? What kind of steps do you mean that you can take to kind of...
Like, I guess just doing it instead of just thinking about it. If I just like get to it instead of holding myself back and thinking about it all the time, I think that will definitely help me in the future.
Do you label it as anxiety, or do you? I don't want to throw labels like I said before, but I wonder or do you just sort of take it as something's going on here and I'm not sure what it is?
Yeah, pretty much that. Like I know I do have anxiety, but like it's not like constant.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely spikes when I think about interacting with people or like doing things where other people can see me or hear me. So,
which I mean, I can't believe that we're sitting here right talking on the radio because I mean, would you have been able to do this before the podcast? Do you think?
Probably not. No.
Wow.
It's crazy
that's really saying something.
She's
that's
a natural
amazing,
leader,
right?
She's a natural leader. She's
Clearly,
outspoken.
yeah.
It's amazing that Noah's able to come out and do this.
Yeah. What's so cool, though, is, Noah just said before the podcast, maybe wouldn't have felt the confidence to do something like this interview we're doing today. What does that make you feel like, Omar? Like, what are your hopes for keeping this going in our community when you see that it has such a direct and impact?
My hope is that, like, I come from a generation where we didn't talk about mental health at all. So you just had to deal with whatever you had to deal with. So the hope is that more young people feel brave enough to talk about what they're going through and share what they're going through with their friends, with each other, and that people start listening to them, because I feel like coming from my generation, we kind of brush things off and we'll tell you, like, suck it up, right? But really, we're just not listening. We're just not listening to how hard things are. Things are different. Social media, everything is different for this generation, and my hope is that they continue to share and continue to encourage other people to talk.
Every individual obviously is very is different. So I don't mean to lump people together, but I do wonder what common themes come up among the young people that have joined the podcast and been part of the episodes.
A constant and recurring theme is the effect of, say, social media on their mental health and the images and the way they see themselves based on social media. That's one of the big ones. It's multiple diagnoses and understanding how to navigate systems when it comes to mental health, as in going to see the same counselors multiple times, talking to your guidance counselor or another counselor, just navigating that and the difficulties that come with that.
You started by saying that part of the need for this is the weights that exist, right? The problems in the system. We've reported on them a lot at CBC, to reach out and even get help. Do you see this as sort of, how much does this help? People may still be seeking other kinds of professional help, perhaps, but how much do you see this as even making a great impact?
I see it as I'm hoping that it has a great impact. I mean, I feel like it should. I think the outlet is there, and I'm hoping that it has a strong impact on encouraging people to, again, just talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rude question. You ready? How old are you?
Ugh.
You said your generation.
I turned 50 next month.
Okay, I turned 50 last year. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So same generation. I get that, right? It's a completely different time now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is.
I've never been to therapy. I could probably go to therapy. I probably should go to therapy. But we just didn't do it. We didn't talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this generation, I think they're a little bit more open to maybe trying these things to help themselves.
I just went for my first time in my life. I think I was in my 40s, and it was around something specific that had happened. and it changed everything for me. You're talking about understanding your brain, Noah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, have you ever been stuck in the system? Like, have you had to wait for any sort of, are you relating to that aspect, that like what is out there for you to have an outlet or to have some help?
I don't think so. Like, I genuinely think the first time I've ever been to therapy wasn't until a couple of years ago.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you both for being here and talking about this. It's such an important thing to happen in our community. Where can people listen?
So you can listen at Huddle, let'slisten.ca. That's our website. We're on all the streaming platforms. We're also in the midst of starting a video version of the podcast. We have a couple of students from Rhetoric College and the University of Manitoba, and they're going to come help us film. And so youth are painting the room. They're getting the space ready. We have all the equipment. So we should be filming the first episode of that this month. And going forward, 6 months from now, I want to get a few episodes ready. We'll start releasing.
Very cool. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
And thank you for being so open and for sharing with us today, Noah. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
What a meaningful conversation that was with Noah Viner-Finley, one of the young people who took part in the Let's Listen podcast, and Omar Clark, a producer of the Let's Listen podcast, and the service navigation specialist at Huddle South Central. You should check them out in Winnipeg and online, as he mentioned. Well, I am Marcy Marcusa, and thank you for listening to This is Manitoba, our daily podcast from CBC News. Don't forget to like and share.